I love art. I love everything to do about it. I love the expressionism of it. I love the fact that people put so much emotion into their art. I am not one of those people.
Hey there, beautiful souls. I'm Amber McCrae, your therapeutic nutritionist and emotionally focused therapy coach, dedicated to guiding you on your holistic wellness journey. If you're ready to reclaim your health, nourish your body, and cultivate deeper connections within yourself and others, let's chat. Schedule a free consultation today and let's explore how holistic nutrition and emotionally focused therapy can support you on your path to wellness. Schedule that free consultation now and take the first steps towards a healthier, happier you. Find the link to my Linktree in the episode description below. Okay, welcome back to another episode of Connection Over Perfection. In today's episode, we're cutting through the noise with someone who knows the power of quiet conversation. An artist I crossed paths with on TikTok, whose work and words have the kind of honesty that just sticks with you. Jason's life is a canvas of different roles. He's a business owner, a dad, and the kind of grandson that makes you hope you're doing something right at 97. But what's really compelling is his commitment to mental health. He's been in the deep end and doesn't just throw you a lifeline, he gets in and swims beside you. His art isn't just for show, it's his way of saying, hey, I get it, to anyone who's struggling. And with his upcoming gallery feature and a voice that's authentic as his experiences, Jason's here to remind us that it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to be okay. So let's dive into a conversation about life, art, and the journey of finding solid ground. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate being on the show.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so we're going to dive right in. Can you tell us just a little teeny bit about who you are and what you do?
My name is Jason Hanson. I live in California. I've been doing art for as long as I can remember. And I love art. I love everything to do about it. I love the expressionism of it. I love the fact that people put so much emotion into their art. I am not one of those people. If I'm having emotions, I cannot do art. And so I will sit there and deal with my shit until I can get back because I don't do bad art. So I can't do art when I'm emotional. So with that being said, I'm a father. I have two wonderful children. One's 22, one's gonna be 7, and they're really the force of behind of what I do because just the kudos and the my daughter being like my biggest fan. It's really amazing to have.
Hmm. I can see that was really emotional for you. That hit a raw spot. I can tell that your kids really mean a lot to you.
My daughter got me one of the best birthday presents last year. She got me this sign from Spirit, and it's from Dahlia. She says, "This is my art, and it's dangerous." And when my ex-wife asked her to explain that, and she says, "Because I'm amazing at art."
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
So I put that on my wall right in front of my desk so I can see it every day to remind me that every time I put my pencil to the paper, I need to be dangerous and be amazing.
Hmm. What a huge inspiration. I love that. Thank you. Something you said that I found really interesting that I don't think that we've really talked about yet is you said you don't do art when you're emotional.
No.
And I just want to circle back to that. Can you talk a little bit more about that? You were saying that when you're doing art, you really want to be focused and present. And so when you're emotional, that's not really you're not really able to do that. Is that close?
Yeah, because I don't do bad art. In my opinion, I don't do bad art. So if I'm emotional and I can't focus on what I'm doing, I can't do it. So
Mm,
I have to take a step back and deal with what I'm going through, get that ironed out so I can continue putting my best work forward. So everything you see that I do, there's no emotion in it for me. Now, if it gives, I've done plenty of pieces that are emotional to other people. I don't want to sound like I'm mean, but I love when people cry when they get a piece of my work and it hits them so hard that it because it means that much to them. It makes me so happy to see the emotion that I've been able to give, being able to give to them and my work and stuff like that.
I love what you said is that because art is so important in giving, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's this gift that you give and you love to be able to tap into other people's emotions. And so, really, you need to be able to clear your emotions and process your emotions so that you can be present in your artwork so that you can connect with other people. Is that close?
Oh, it's 100%.
I love that. So do you feel like that has forced you to sort of deal with your own emotions in a good way?
Oh yeah, and that's all part of my journey with my mental health is being able to process and deal with what I'm going through, so I can because I'm a business owner. My business is art. If I'm emotional, I'm not making money,
Mm, yeah.
and I can't afford to be crawled up in my bed crying, you know,
Right.
because I'm going through something. Don't get me wrong, I do go through things, but I have to be able to function as a business owner because my business is my art.
Right. That accountability almost. It helps hold you accountable.
Yeah,
So, Jason, as a father, a business owner, and a caretaker, can you share how you've navigated your own mental health challenges? And I know you talked a little bit about this, but how has your art played a role in that journey? Can you go a little bit deeper into that?
yeah. So as I publicly speak, I am divorced. I've been divorced for almost 2 years. So as much as I would love to say I'm all that present father and stuff, I get to see my daughter as often as I can. But I do calls with her. I do video calls with her almost every night, and nothing is more important than her and stuff. My son's 22, so he's doing his own thing. I talk to him. I talk to him when I can. I don't exist right now. you know nobody
Right.
exists except for what's going on in his circle. But my daughter, I'll spend hours on the phone with her, playing dolls, with her because I don't have a vehicle, so I can't see her as much as I can. And my ex-wife, she has a lot of illnesses and stuff that don't need to be brought out there, but so she's trying to take care of her. So we do the best to co-parent with each other, and honestly, we have a great relationship with that as co-parents and stuff. So anytime my daughter wants to give me a call and stuff, she'll call me and we'll sit there and talk. If I'm live, I'll kill the live right away to sit down and talk with her. And as a former caretaker, because my grandma got moved to a home because her illness was progressing and stuff. But before that, I was taking care of her during the night, so my cousins could take care of her during the day. So I have a unique ability of not sleeping. So I would take care of her at night while working and doing what I do, and then I would rest for a little bit and then get back up and work through the day. Because when you do something you love, there's no time clock. There's no set hours. There's no lunch breaks. There's no clock. And honestly, half the time I don't even know what time it is or what day it is.
Right.
Honestly, because I'm doing what I'm doing. But to be the grandson, that she needed me to be, I was, there with her whenever she needed me. And same thing with my daughter. Everything else comes second to that. And I learned that when I was punching a time clock because it was all about, oh, I got to get this money so I could take care of my family, where I was missing. So at the sacrifice of that, I had to sacrifice family so I could take care of family. But now that I run my own business, my time is for them.
And so, how do you think that all of that has really played into your mental health challenges? You know, you mentioned that that cycle of having to work for your family, except for it costs being with your family. Did that play a role in your mental health?
It played a huge part because one, the stress is also one of the reasons why my marriage ended up failing because communication was lost. Always arguing and stuff like that, and overall, and then the stress of having to be the provider and then be the supervisor, and I was in the security industry, so like I was always on, you know, even when I was off, I was on call, so at a moment I could get called in to go, take a shift, or if a situation happened to go deal with it. So yeah, it played a huge part in my mental health because at the time I was also having a lot of issues with my sleep apnea, and I was on medication to help keep me awake, which one of the side effects for that medication was kind of like roid rage. So mixed with anger and frustration and my mental health, I was basically just out there just going like full on Hulk.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I was, I'd see a fire because someone would, a homeless person would set a fire to stay warm, and I'm running in to go put out a fire. I'm not a fireman. I'm not a, but I have 12 extinguishers in the back of my vehicle, because of that. But I can say that with my rotator cuff getting torn and me no longer doing security, I was able to really confront my anger and further dive into cope with my mental health because I don't need to fix it. It's there. It's not going away.
Right.
There's no fixing it. But me learning to deal with it in healthy ways and being able to recognize triggers and all those other wonderful things and all those super big words and stuff that we all talk about with mental health. It's a constant struggle. It's a constant battle, and it's a battle that I choose not to lose ever again.
Mm. Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I just want to kind of go back and just reiterate and check in with you. Overall, this weight of having to be the sole provider and also taking care of your family, and like you said, always just being on and creating this hyper vigilance of feeling like you have to control everything and fix everything and be on all of the time, coupled, like you said, with your sleep apnea and the medication, just created this, you said, this Hulk mentality, just kind of take over everything, this anger. And you said when you tore your rotator cuff, it made you slow down, and it really made you sit with yourself and see all of these things that are happening to you, and that what you were doing wasn't working and wasn't getting you where you wanted to go. So it really made you face everything. Is that close?
Oh yeah, I figured out I was not happy in life and with me and my overall situation, and I didn't like the person that I had become because not only was I raging out there at my field, but I was also raging at home.
Mm.
And when I say, like my marriage failed, and people like they like to point fingers, oh, it was my partner's fault. No, no, a lot of it was my fault, and I stopped communication because I didn't feel like I was appreciated. I stopped communication because I didn't feel like I was being heard. I was not happy because I was going home and little things would set me off. And I would go from 0 to 100 and just be angry and yelling. And it wasn't fair to the people that I loved. And it led me to make a decision that ultimately ended my marriage. And out of respect for my ex-wife and respect for myself, I could never go back to try and fix it because what I did was just the end all of things. Just that there was no turning back from what I did. So after I left my ex and I chose my happiness, I actually spiraled really hard for the first year of my divorce, and then that led me to try to commit suicide twice because it was the first year that I wasn't with my family during the holidays, and that's why I really say so much during the holidays. If people need to talk, there's people that will listen and be there, because I was one of those, and I had people around me that were ready to listen. I didn't give a damn. I didn't want to be here anymore. So when the second time I tried to commit suicide and it didn't work, I realized that I might be here for something greater than myself. Not trying to be all philosophical or anything, but for a higher purpose. So I then started, getting me in check and working on me. And over the next year, I spent really working on my therapy, recognizing my triggers, and dealing with, like, and I don't mean just like my past with my ex. I mean my whole entire life. Like I touched a little bit on yesterday on your show, letting go of my past traumas, my past pain, all the stuff that is out of my control because it's in the past. And I say, quote the amazing Rafiki, but it's in the past, and it can't hurt me anymore. Yeah, it's like you touched on. Yeah, it's a scar, but for me, scars heal. The scars are always there, but I've chosen to not let them affect me anymore.
Hmm. I just want to make sure I hear you correctly. Is that after this incident where you and your ex wife split up, you spiraled and you basically really didn't want to be here anymore. And so you said after the second attempt to, unalive, is that that's really when you were faced with, hey, maybe I'm here for a greater purpose. Maybe there's something I'm missing. And so let me try something different. Let me see if I can deal with my shit and see what this life is really about. And that's when you started going to counseling and dealing with your past, confronting it, working through all of the trauma and the triggers. Is that close?
Oh yeah. Well, I've been in counseling for over 20 years, but and when I was spiraling, it didn't matter. I was still having frequent sessions.
Mm.
It didn't matter. I was talking about it. I was talking about it, but I wasn't dealing with it. You could talk about things all the time.
That's huge.
You
Yeah.
could talk about it, but until you actually sit there and deal with it, and the only person that can deal with it is you. It's like when I tell people that you can't help somebody unless they want to help themselves. I had to help myself. I didn't like who I was, and I needed to fix that. And I can say today that I love who I am today at this present moment.
Quick shout out to the latest voice in our podcast connection network, Amanda Hope, the eclectic spirit behind the beloved High Priestess. Amanda merges the worlds of spirituality and science, offering insights from tarot to therapy. Her journey is all about empowerment and healing. And don't forget to explore the diverse conversations from the rest of our family: Heather with Hot Mess Espresso, Hunter with Everything is Connected, Richard with the Men of the House podcast, and of course, here on our journey, Connection Over Perfection. Check us out through the link in our episode description, and welcome aboard, Amanda. I love that. And you said dealt with it. And I think that this is such a huge topic to talk about, is that yeah, you can be in counseling. You can be around people who have the tools. You can even be working the tools per se, but not actually utilizing them. So how would you say you dealt with it? Because you said you were in counseling, and I know a lot of people face this, is, they may be in counseling, they may have coaches, they may have all the tools, but until they implement the tools and integrate them into their life, they won't see the results. So, when you say dealt with, what do you think changed? What did you do differently?
I stopped blaming myself for what transpired, because, like I said, it happened. It happened. Some things were my fault. A lot of things were my fault, but I accepted what I did, and I chose to move past it instead of constantly beating myself up because it happened. There's nothing else I could do about it because once it's in the past, it's where it's at. I can't change the past. I can't go back in time. I don't have a time machine. I can't go back and fix anything. So for me to able to move on from it, I had to take a hard look at myself and say, yes, I did these things. I did terrible things growing up. I did terrible things as an adult. I was, you know, not a good husband. I was not a good person. And when I finally accepted that and stopped beating myself up every day of my life, I was able to, hey, but the person I am today is not that person.
Mm,
I'm not that person anymore.
right. So your past doesn't define you,
Yeah,
and you were able to take accountability but also say, I did things that were shitty, but I'm not a shitty person today.
yeah. And that was like one of the biggest eye openers for me was that I am not a shitty person. Like I spend almost every day talking to people and pumping people up on TikTok and taking people's calls because they need someone to talk to.
Well, this kind of leads into our next question is your advocacy for mental health is clear. You talk about it all the time. I love it. So why are you passionate about helping others with their mental health, and how do you use your experience, to help guide them and be there for them?
That's a really good question. So the reason why I'm so passionate about advocating for mental health is the fact that when I went to get help, there wasn't help because I wasn't crazy enough for them. And when I snapped and I did have my mental breakdown and I got put on a hold, all these avenues opened up to me. All this help became readily available to me because I was the right kind of crazy. And that's really sad to say is that I had to be the right kind of crazy. And I hate to use the word crazy too, to get the help I needed. And I was also raised that men shut up, men choke down their feelings, men go to work, men don't let shit affect them, because if you do let it affect you, if you do cry, you're viewed as weak. And so, the more angrily that I became, and Susan Jacobs was my first therapist. And if it wasn't for her, she literally brought me out of the darkness and into the light. And she's now retired, but she was my first therapist. My second therapist that I'm still working with today is Kathy Riley. She works with an organization called MFI Recovery. But Susan, she worked with me for over 15 years. And literally, when I say she brought me from the darkness to the light, I couldn't even get off of a couch because I couldn't go outside because of all the issues that I was having. I still have those issues today, but with her help and her guidance, I was able to navigate and learn coping mechanisms and coping skills and things to be able to be a functioning person in society. I have good days and I have bad days with it, but when I got onto TikTok, I found a plethora of people that were just like me. And with me going through the stuff that I've gone through since I was a child, and now that I'm an adult, and that I've had these issues, and I'm at a different place in my life, I can recognize when I see people starting the journey, and I can offer support. And I'm not telling them what they need to do, but like somewhat of a guidance, of a push and stuff to try and encourage them to take those steps, to start their journey. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I promote and I advocate for mental health, because yeah, we talk more and more about it. I just don't think it's talked about enough. Still,
Yeah, definitely. And so, what I think I'm hearing you say really is that you are bridging that gap. You were saying that the mental health world, you have to be so bad that you need extreme help. You have to be sick enough to where it's catastrophic, with extreme measures in order to really get any help that is effective and that can offer lasting results. And so you're here and you're saying, "Hey, I've been here. I've been where you are, and I'm still here. I still struggle sometimes." And so just being that person they can come to when sometimes that's all they really need is just to talk about it,
Yeah,
and having somebody that doesn't judge them or try to fix them in the moment, but just saying, "Yeah, it fucking sucks where you are. I get it. That makes so much sense. The weight of the world is on you and you don't really want to be here right now. That makes sense."
and that's why when I say it's okay to not be okay, it really is. It's okay. And I love that you added that second part in there. It's also okay to be okay because it is. It really is. And not enough people understand that. They're like, "Oh my God, if I'm not okay, people are going to judge me." And I'm here to tell people, who gives a fuck what they think? If they judging you, they're not in your corner. And I want to be in as many people's corner as I can.
You mentioned too that if they judge you for where you are, then they're really not in your corner. And I think that in this society, that's so much of what is happening, is that judgment of expectation. You should be doing this, you should be doing that, and not just loving people right where they are. And I think that that's what I hear you saying, is that you're here to just love people right where they are and accept them for where they are on their journey and in their life, and whether they're okay or not okay. You're like, "Hey, I'm in your corner and we're doing this journey together. We're all on it together and I'll walk alongside you."
Yeah. And I've talked to so many people that have said, like, "Hey, I know I need help, but they're not ready to bridge that gap yet." And I'm like, "Okay, well, you're not ready. It's okay. It's okay that you're not ready. You recognize that you're not ready. But you know what? I'm still here in your corner. So when you are ready, you can walk through that door and you have people in your corner. I'm still going to be in your corner, regardless if you walk through those doors or not." And not enough people get to hear that, because people get upset with people. They're like, "Oh, why don't you listen? Why don't you just do what I say?" I'm not here to tell you what you need to do. People know what they need to do. They know when they're ready. When they're ready, they're ready. Pretty much. It's simple as that. It's like an addict. When an addict is ready to get help, they'll get help. You can't force an addict into rehab and stuff, because if they're not ready, they're not going to stay with it. And it's the same thing with everything. If you as a person are not ready to walk through those doors, you're not going to stick with it.
Right.
And there's people on the fence that are just looking for that moral support. And I'm here to say, I see you. I know you're not ready, but I'm still in your corner, regardless of when you're ready or not ready. It may take 50 years from now, but when you're ready, I'm going to be with you.
I love what you said. And this kind of ties into what you were talking about a little bit before, is, not really caring what people think and doing what's best for you. You saying, "Hey, even if you're not ready, I'm still in your corner," sending this message that, "Hey, I see you and you are worth it and you are worthy of having somebody in your corner." And I think that that plays such a huge role in what you were talking about. Is I don't think that people can really get to that place until they feel some sort of self-worth. It's hard to not care what other people think if they don't feel any self-worth for themselves. Would you say that that played a role in also your journey?
Oh yeah, because when I stopped giving a shit what people thought about me and also my artwork, like I actually was able to figure that about my artwork early in life. I didn't give a shit what people thought. I was gonna do art because I loved it. But when I stopped giving a shit what people thought about me, oh, it just opened it. It was like a wave crashing over me, because I no longer cared that I may not be everybody's cup of tea. I'm a very opinionated person. That's not everybody's thing. If you come and you ask me something, I don't pull punches. I'm going to tell you very blunt, and I'm going to tell you very point blank. This is what it is, because I don't want to sugarcoat shit to people. And I don't expect people to do the same thing to me. Like if I came to you and I said, Amber, I'm going through this, I would expect you to, be like, hey, man, come on, this is what it is. And I appreciate that in people.
I'll validate first and then we'll go into that. And I think you said something really big that I just want to kind of go back to is you were talking about taking that accountability and really knowing that, yeah, you may have fucked up, but you are not a bad person, right? And seeing your worth in those moments. Do you think those were connected? That moment where you were able to say, yes, I may have done bad things, but I'm not a bad person, and creating that worth within yourself, helping you to move forward and not really care about what other people think because you felt and you knew that you were a good person.
Yeah, it plays a huge role in it because I'm not a bad person. I may have done bad things, but I'm not a bad person.
Right. And so what the other people say about you really doesn't matter because you know who you are.
Yep.
And that's huge. And I think that it takes a lot for people to get to there to see their worth. And I think I hear you saying, "Hey, I want to help you see your worth by just being here and letting you know that you are worthy of being seen and heard and valued right where you are." And I absolutely love that. That aligns with everything that I'm doing too. So I love that.
Yeah.
So I just kind of want to go back to talking about the healthy coping mechanisms. And what are some healthy coping mechanisms that you replaced with some of your unhealthy coping mechanisms?
So this may sound weird, but I'm a very pain oriented person. So some of the coping mechanisms early on, I used to take rubber bands and put them on my wrist. And when I was starting to recognize that I was going having a triggering moment, I would pull those rubber bands back and snap the hell out of them. And that pain receptor, would be able to pull me out of that trigger and say, "Hey, you're in reality. You're okay." And then when that stopped working, my therapist told me to grab ice cubes and you hold them in your hand until you can't hold them no more because of the cold. And that was a huge thing for me early on. And then once I was able to understand what my triggers were and how they come apart, I no longer needed those pain receptors because I could see it. I knew it. Like just a little bit about my mental health is I have schizoaffective disorder, which I have auditory hallucinations. I do have visual, and as I've gone on in my journey, where the hallucinations and the voices that were heavily and prevalent in my life have now became like a dull static. Like the voices, I still hear them every day, but it's more like background noise. The hallucinations and stuff, when I see them, I call it the double take. I see it, I turn away, I close my eyes, I look back, and it's not there. So I know it's a hallucination, and that's how I deal with it now. A lot of times, if people see me just staring off into space, it's because I'm seeing something. But I've come so far in my journey to where it's there. It's there. I don't lie about it. I don't, beat around the bush. It's there. I have it every day. It doesn't go away. But now that I know how to deal with it and cope with it and recognize when it's coming on, I can, still go about my day.
So I just want to say, Jason, thank you so much for being vulnerable and just being able to speak about these things. Sometimes they're not easy at all to be vulnerable about what is happening with us. And I value your authenticity to be able to talk about these taboo topics because I know so many people are dealing with very similar things, and helping our listeners know that they're not alone and that you can have these things and learn how to navigate them and still have a good life, which is it's hard sometimes to achieve or even hope for or even see possible. And so thank you for that. And I think I hear you saying too is with the ice cubes and the rubber band is really tricking your body back into being present and snapping, like you said, snapping out of it. And just when we're stuck in that fight or flight, when those things are happening and we're not able to really recognize the triggers yet, we have to have something that brings us present. Otherwise, we spiral and we get stuck. And so I hear that those tools really worked for you in the beginning until you could be able to really recognize, hey, this is a trigger for me. What happens to my body? What's going on? And then now you've gotten to a point where you're able to use different coping mechanisms, just being aware and saying, hey, I'm in this hallucination right now. I recognize this. I'm going to, look away and then move on with my day. Like it's there, but it doesn't have to consume you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so huge because a lot of mental health, it just feels like it consumes us and there's no way out.
Oh, definitely. Because when I was first starting out, I would have hallucinations and I'd be pretty much balled up in a corner. Or if hearing the voices, it would just send me into like this downward spiral because it's like, oh my God, what is wrong with me? I'm hearing this, like what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And as the years progressed, and I was able to get, you know, clarification and, that yeah, there's something wrong, but it's there, and it's okay that it's there. Instead of being scared of it, I chose to confront it head on.
Mm. And also, like you were saying with your past and mistakes, they don't define you. And what I think I'm hearing you say is that this also doesn't define you. Astigmatism doesn't define you. A label doesn't define you. It's just something part of what you're dealing with in this time and where you're at, but it doesn't define who Jason is. And that I think is so dynamic and so huge, so powerful because I believe that so many who are dealing with I mean, we're all dealing with mental issues, but when you get a label, it can be very hindering. It can feel like shackles and like, this is who I am now. This is how I identify. But what I'm hearing you say is that you didn't use it as an identification. It didn't define you. It's just part of your journey.
Yeah, and also for the longest time, I wouldn't tell people I had mental health issues because I didn't want that to define me. I didn't want to be known as, hey, the the crazy guy in the corner. I didn't want that. I wanted to go out there and people see me for me, not because I have something wrong. And now it's not that I want people to see me for having mental health issues. I want people to see me for being me with mental health issues.
I love that.
And to despite my issues with mental health and my constant going through my journey with it, I'm still Jason.
That's huge. I kind of want to just go back to your art because it's one of the reasons that we connected and your art is amazing. So, how does art tie into or play a significant part in your mental health? How has it provided support during tough times or, what role or connection does it play in your mental health?
Art has always been my escape. And this is why I can't do art when I'm emotional because I use art for that escape.
That makes so much sense.
So when I'm drawing, it's like Happy Gilmore. It's my happy place.
Mm,
It's my zen. You know, it's my everything. Like when I was growing up and I was being abused, I had art. I had art to fall back on. Growing up, dealing with everything I was dealing with, I had art. Art has been the one constant thing in my life that's always been good, and I refuse to, have a tarnish or use it for something that's not happy.
mm. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been a healthy coping mechanism for you basically your whole life.
Yeah,
So, given your many responsibilities and personal experiences, what key advice or strategies would you offer someone who is struggling, to balance or I don't even like the word balance, but to navigate life's demands while maintaining their mental health?
Well, that's really up to the individual, honestly. Like, what works for me may not work for the next person. And that's something that everybody has to learn on their own. I can tell someone what works for me, but whatever works for them is works for them. Like when people do art with emotion or they do poetry with emotion, that doesn't work for me. So what works for me may not work for the next person. So the only advice I could really offer somebody to navigate is to get the help you need. Rather it's a phone call, rather it's a mental health professional, rather it's doing art, rather it's doing, whatever makes you happy, do that because I can't tell the next person what they should do, to cope because that's up to them to find their coping skills.
Well, and I think that that's a huge thing right there. And we talk about this a lot on TikTok when we go live is finding what works for you. And that's so huge. And a lot of the way that you find what works for you is finding what doesn't work for you. Trying lots of different things, try lots of different modalities, see what feels right for you, what resonates. And I think two things that we talked about in this episode is one, you started off with your whys. What is your why? You got really emotional just talking about your kids and your daughter and her being a huge reason why you keep going. I think whys are so big, finding, why you're here and what's important to you. Then you also talked about finding value in yourself and finding worth, and it's really hard to navigate these issues and these struggles that we have when you don't have that self-worth.
Yeah, it really is. And that's a lot of things that I see people, their like number one struggle is being able to like themselves and accepting who they are today, not accepting who they were.
Yeah, and we talked about that.
Yeah. And so, like I said, when it comes to coping and stuff, what works for me may not work for the person next door.
Right. So true. And you had also mentioned, we talked about your past does not define you. And no matter what you're struggling with, if you have a label or you've been through trauma, that does not define you. And really getting to a place where you feel that true for yourself, and however you can get there is really going to be a pivotal moment for you, for our listeners, right? For you, for me, for anybody listening, those are huge things. And Jason, I really love that you are bridging that gap. You're really just being here for people, saying, "Hey, I see you, I hear you, I find value in you just where you are." And I absolutely love that. And it aligns with exactly what I'm doing, is loving people right where they are and not trying to fix it. We have enough people in this society trying to fix people. I really truly believe that we just need more people loving people where they are and helping them feel safe and worth and value and seen and heard, and giving them the space and holding the space for when they are ready, if they are going to be ready, to move forward and doing the work for themselves.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because the individual only knows when they're ready.
Yeah, and that's huge. Jason, thank you so much for your vulnerability, for what you do, for putting your art out in this world, and for just being here with us and being so authentic. Thank you so much.
Oh, definitely. I appreciate you giving me a chance to share my story and to help further, the platform that I've chosen to bring to the world.
Yes, and all the information will be in the description of this episode. But Jason, tell us a little bit about where they can find you and what you're doing right now in your life and in your business.
Later today, I'm going to be on the Gin Project on TikTok. I'm also going to be featured in an online gallery called The Collective I believe next month. I'm also going to have some of my paintings hung up in a coffee house in Riverside, California called Back to the Grind. Also, I run my business. I do commissions. I also have my website, which is Hansen Art Studio LLC .square.site, where you guys can purchase, prints, some of my original artwork.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much for all that you do. And I'm so excited to see where you go with all of this amazing stuff that you're doing. And I think that on behalf of all of us and all the listeners and TikTok, we appreciate you helping bridge the gap. Thank you, Jason.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
The views and opinions expressed by myself and any guest on this podcast are solely ours and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of any organizations we are affiliated with. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as medical advice. As always, consult with a trusted healthcare professional regarding any medical conditions or concerns.